Hello and welcome to Game Over Vancouver. I am your host today. I am Samantha. You can find me on X or Twitter at SamanthaCP underscore. Um, and I have with me tonight my co-host Parker at Parker's Pucks. Make sure you go follow both of us on Twitter, or just follow Parker. I'm super annoying. Don't follow me. Follow at SDPN Sports. I am back for the first time since October. I think the last show I did was in October because I was out of town. And the Canucks, for better or worse, I don't know if we can say they deserve that win, but they win 3-1 over the Anaheim Ducks. Brock Besser scores twice, hits his 17th of the season. He's now the leading goal scorer in the NHL on Hockey Fights Cancer Night, which is a great story, especially coming back from the big brouhaha of last season's Hockey Fights Cancer Night for the Canucks. Parker, how are you? How are things going?
And I'm muted, which is a great start. I'm great. Yeah, a weird one for the Canucks here. A game that they absolutely deserve to win if you take a full 60-minute time scale, but a game that they definitely deserve to lose for about 25 minutes of. But no, it's good. Good to be here. And yeah, happy it's at least a win.
Yeah, nice to talk about that. I think the one thing I really kind of paid attention to, if you guys haven't seen, I was in Asia, so I completely stopped paying attention to hockey. Other than I signed in once from Singapore to laugh at how bad the Edmonton Oilers were at that point. But the Canucks were 8-5 while I was gone, which is a pretty good November. I know the latter half, the last couple of weeks, has been maybe a bit rough, but you know, maybe that's a bit of the game tonight. They're managing to pull out the wins and stay kind of in the top five of the league, while even when they're having some rough patches.
Yeah, and emotionally, you wouldn't. And as someone who's been here, it hasn't felt like an 8-5 last 13 games because really the last 10 haven't been great. It's been win one, lose one. I think they've lost 6 of their last 11 coming into this game, and yeah, they needed a win here as sort of a get right against the Ducks, and especially with the games coming up, right? You look at the games that they've been winning and losing, right? They've been beating the Sharks a bunch. They lost to the Kraken. They beat the Kraken. They lost to the Sharks. And you're looking ahead, and you're like, all right, well, you've got Vegas, who is struggling on Thursday, but it's still Vegas, and you have Calgary, who is actually, sort of turning their game on a little bit. This is your best chance to get a win this week and kick it off right. And now, hey, you just got to win one of the next two, and it's a good winning week.
And you know what? If they beat Vegas on Thursday, they'll have hit double-digit wins this month. They'll have as many wins as they had goals in their first game this month.
Yeah, that's surprising. I mean, it helps that they've played a million times, it feels like, this month with that 11 games in 17 days or whatever it was that they had. So that's why you miss so much.
I know. It feels like I've
they just
missed
didn't
a
stop
lot.
playing. Yeah, so, I mean, this one was, very strong start, I think, for the Canucks in this one. I mean, I have a note that I took this note 5 minutes in, that they were dominating the play and didn't have a single shot on goal. I think they spent 5 minutes skating around in circles, battling with the puck down low, no shots, but they did end up scoring. You mentioned Brock Besser off the top. He gets his 16th, which puts him into the league lead. So while you were gone, he didn't stop scoring. Phil Giuseppe did some great work here, and I sort of want to go to you on the Beauvillier trade because Phil Giuseppe gets in the lineup because of that trade. And in my opinion, he did more here than Beauvillier really has.
Yeah, I mean, we'll circle back to the Beauvillier trade later on in the show, but I think I said it the last time I was on. I literally forgot he was on the team at that point, and I think that's been consistent pretty much since he's been here.
Yeah, 2 goals this season, and they were the 9th and 10th goals against San Jose in that 10-1 win.
Yeah,
that's not very good.
Yeah. Was there anyone else who stood out to you tonight, either for good play, bad play?
Niels Höglander was really good, and he has been the last handful of games, especially after coming out of the lineup 1 or 2 times. He has been sort of classic Niels Höglander, and it's a weird thing to say for a player who's in his early 20s, but he's just battling so hard, winning every puck battle, it feels like. Every time the puck gets knocked off his stick, he finds a way to get it back. I think he really stood out in this one.
Yeah, that's another player I see benefiting from the trade and just having a little more space in that lineup. For me, one of the biggest stories of the game, I touched on it earlier, was, obviously last year, Besser really struggled. Hockey Fights Cancer Night was super meaningful for him. He was almost a healthy scratch. There was the whole storyline about his dad and how bad of a public look that was for the Canucks at the time. And what a redemption arc kind of a new season makes. Now he's leading the league in goals, scores 2 goals on Hockey Fights Cancer Night for the Canucks. What are your thoughts on Besser's season so far?
Yeah, this one's weird for me too, because that was my Boschford project.
Yeah.
Last year was that, and being, my first experience like at a practice around all the media members and just hearing like the commotion of like, is Besser an extra here? Like they're trying to sort it out, and that whole day and how that unfolded, and then warm-ups, he's out there and Josh was not playing. I mean, there's obviously no one who deserves it more, really. This sort of bounce back, going from, whatever was last year. How many goals? Do you know how many goals he had last year?
You know what? I have no idea.
It wasn't a lot. It was in 74 games, he had 18 goals. He has 17 in 23 this season. The math on that is a 60-goal pace still. He's had a 60-goal pace for like the last month. I mean, it's awesome. There's no one I would rather see. And they're not like, he's had a couple unreal shots, but so many of his goals are just being in the right spot, right? His goal in the game against Seattle, where he sort of reached back and it slid one in. The goal against the Sharks, the one that made it 4-3 late in the third, just being in the right spot on the near post. And then even the empty netter tonight, right, where he's just able to help with a breakout, and he's not missing, even if it's 160 feet away. He's hitting an open net from there.
It's hard to think of a player more deserving of kind of a feel good story at this point. I think you were actually my guest, and we talked about your Botchford project piece last year. So it's kind of a nice full circle. Speaking of players who are maybe not in the right place at the right time, having some bad luck, there were 2 kind of standouts for me, and have been standouts for me all season. And maybe standout is not the right word; it's more of a negative connotation. Obviously, you had the tweet about Myers missing the net and taking out Ilya Mikheyev in the 3rd period. I don't think we have an update on Mikheyev yet, and if we see that, we'll talk about it. And I think someone else on Canucks Twitter, I think it was at Beast Mode, tweeted, name a more iconic duo than Myers in taking out his teammates. So, I didn't think Myers could have kind of worse seasons than he's had previously, but I think, notwithstanding that I've been gone for the last month, not a great season for him so far. And the other standout for me tonight in terms of being snake bitten and the way things are going is Connor Garland missing that open net tap in on that play from Pettersson. It's just another.
Yeah. Look, Tyler Myers has been honestly okay this year, like especially compared to the last few. When the entire defense was healthy for the limited amount of time that was the case, and Myers was playing 16 minutes a night, 17 minutes a night, and he simplified his game because of that. And genuinely, he had a good 2-week stretch where he was just very, very good, like for his role. Maybe not for his money, but for his role. The last couple of games, and especially tonight, Tyler Myers was frustrating to watch. There was a myriad of just mistakes and giveaways, and there was one play where the puck got dumped around the net in their own zone, and he just went the complete wrong direction. And then that play where you're in the offensive zone, you're getting set up, you have you have a chance to score, and Mikheyev's not even a screen here. He's on his way to become a screen, but this shot is it's going 4 feet wide. I think maybe 3, maybe 2. Either way, it's missing the net, and by the time it gets to the net, it's going to be high, right? They always say if you're a D-man, if there's pressure, if there's traffic in front, you want to keep the shot low, right? It's the best chance it has of getting through. There's going to be a better chance at a rebound. He decides to just sail this thing And Mikheyev, who is seemingly the unluckiest player of all time, has his knee like bent right as it hits, and yeah, that's a scary one.
Yeah, hopefully it's just a stinger. Mikheyev's had some really bad luck with injuries the last few seasons, and I think I said this on the last show I was on as well. I think he just makes a huge difference to that line playing with Pedersen and Kuzmenko. He adds an element of speed that they don't have otherwise, and just gives them a whole different level.
Yeah, and especially since this line's had a little bit of, they've been slumping a little bit, right? I mean, you have Pedersen, who everyone thinks is injured, even though he had an interview where he's like, I know you guys are trying to create articles or whatever, but I'm fine. He doesn't look fine. I mean, he had some moments tonight where he looked great, but he just looks like he's lost a bit of his step. And then Kuzmenko getting scratched for 2 games, and, he's not been, forechecking very well and creating much opportunity. And Mikheyev's sort of been, the lone guy on this line who's been consistent, right? And maybe not even from a production standpoint, but it just feels like he's always, he's the same player every game. He puts up a handful of points. He's doing absolutely fine as sort of the supporting piece for Pedersen and Kuzmenko. But if those two aren't on, that's sort of all Mikheyev is, right? Is a supporting piece. Yeah. So they need to be better for him to have more of an effect.
On the other player, I know our co-host Kaya, who's in the chat, is I would say Kaya is maybe leading the anti-Connor Garland brigade. I think when Beauvillier was traded today, she said, "Why wasn't it Garland?" What are your thoughts on Connor Garland?
Yeah, Garland is, and this is what Clay's always said, especially, is he always looks like he's working hard, right? And he always looks like he's doing a lot, even if he's not. The underlying numbers have always been in favor of Connor Garland, even when his play hasn't been. Honestly, I think the last couple of games he's been really good. Tonight it sucks that one pass went in front. I mean, Pedersen waited so long there that I don't know if Garland's even expecting the puck to get through, but it did, and good on Pedersen for getting it there. But there was a D-man stick in there to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But especially in this game, which was such a board battle heavy game where both sides were just trying to keep everything below the hash marks in the offensive zone, like Niels Höglander and Connor Garland, that is their specialty, right? Their specialty is just sitting on the boards, spinning a few times and creating a little bit of separation and maybe getting the puck back to the point. And Garland did that pretty well tonight. I honestly thought he had a pretty good game.
Yeah, no disagreement there, although I will say I'm overall not a huge fan. Nice shout out to you. Parker is a great host, big fan. I totally agree.
Thanks.
Yeah. So if you're just joining us, I'm Samantha at SamanthaCP_. This is Parker at Parker's Pucks. The Canucks beat the Anaheim Ducks 3-1 tonight. Besser has 2 goals and takes the lead in NHL scoring in terms of goals. Make sure you subscribe to SDPN Sports, subscribe to both on YouTube and on all social media accounts, and hit like on the stream. Let's pivot into the other big Canucks news today, which is the Canucks trade Anthony Beauvillier to the Chicago Blackhawks for a 5th round pick. This guy, a bit of a surprising trade in the sense that it's the type of trade we haven't seen from this team in a long time. A guy on an expiring contract for a draft pick, clearing up some cap space. Kind of the type of trade that fans have been on them to make more of over the last few years. What were your thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, it's weird because the one time where this team, if any time they're going to be buying is this year, right? And this is the time that they're moving on from a guy. But look, I mean, coming into this year, the Canucks had too much money tied up in wingers, right? I think I said it 600 times over the course of this offseason that they're going to have to trade a winger, and they end up getting some LTIR relief, and they don't have to make that move right away. And then they ended up moving Tanner Pearson, which, I mean, Tanner Pearson hadn't done much useful for the team in a while, so that made sense, and it cleared up 3 1/4. And then there was essentially 3 wingers left in Beauvillier, Garland, and Besser. All the credit to them for not trading Brock Besser, because that has worked out very, very well. And Connor Garland, I made a video this summer that literally was called "The Canucks should not trade Connor Garland," and it was because his numbers were so much better than Anthony Beauvillier's, especially from an underlying perspective. And coming into this year, Beauvillier just hasn't done anything, right? Even if you look at points like 8-22, that's not terrible. That's like a 30-point pace, right? It's not great, but it's not terrible. But for $4+ million, and this team so desperately needs help on the back end, they need a cap space to do that, right? This obviously opens up the ability to go out and get an Ethan Bear and do more. If everything's pointing to Ethan Bear, but Rick Dollywell is saying that they're still interested in Nikita Zadorov, and he carries a $3+ million cap hit, and they kind of have the room to do both now. And cap flexibility for this team has not been a strength ever, seemingly, but now they have a little bit of it. And for a 5th round pick, which is less valuable than the pick they traded for Sam Lafferty, because part of this trade is that they get the best 5th round pick that Chicago holds this offseason. I mean, that's just, I think it's just a great tidy move that really has no downside.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as somebody who's been very much, I would say, depressed by the way the Canucks have handled cap space over the last decade, this is another good move in the right direction. If you were looking at the 5th round picks in Chicago and seeing that they don't actually own a 5th round pick, the breakdown is Chicago actually currently owns both Calgary and Chicago's 2024 5th round picks. They owe Toronto the lowest of their 2024 5th round pick. They owe Vancouver the best of the 2024 5th round picks. And obviously if they trade any other require, there's the small change. But that's how it breaks down. Nice move by Alvin. Who do you, I know everyone's talking about getting Zadorov. Is that who you think they should target, or is there someone else you want to see them go for?
I'm not sold on Zadorov, personally. I don't think I've seen him play a lot, really. Like, I don't have a great sort of picture on his game. But he does sort of seem like the exact guy that someone's going to overpay for. Like, he fits every, he's big, he hits hard, like, it's stereotypical overpay for a defenseman kind of guy. However, we're in a market that doesn't have many options, right? There's the Ethan Bear option, which helps a bit, but okay, now you have, if the Canucks have a single defenseman injured, you still have one of McWard or Juleson in the lineup, right? That's probably not ideal if you're trying to make a playoff push. So I don't think the Canucks are going to go out and get one defenseman and call it a day, right? And they have the cap space to do more than that. So I could very well see them signing Ethan Bear for free, and then making a splash for a Zadorov. We've heard Chris Tanev's name a little bit while you were gone. It seems like he'll just come here and get hurt because that's our luck. Yeah. But they're definitely in a position to do something like that. But I don't think they're in a rush, right? I mean, this is a team that has built up a nice buffer. They're 15-7-3, I think, at this point. 15-7-1, I should say. I mean, the Athletic has them projected to get 103 points, 94% chance to make the playoffs before this game even happened. Like, they don't need to make a move right now. They can wait till close to the trade deadline, but defense is clearly where they're going to want to allocate that newly found money.
If you're in the chat and you got any thoughts on this, make sure you save them for the end. We'll be doing the presser at the end. Let us know your thoughts on that trade. I see a lot of people advocating for Chris Tanev in the chat. I know there's a lot of I think sentimental value there, and he's been good in Calgary. I just don't know that that's the right move for this team at this time.
What about Troy Stecher? Let's go get that guy back if we're going to be sentimental.
Yeah, I would take Stecher over Tanev. I know that's probably a controversial opinion, but
for the price, maybe.
For the price.
If we're taking price into account. Sure, Tanev would cost a lot. But yeah, I would rather. I love Troy Stecher, so be better than Noah Juleson.
I watched Zadorov play in Colorado a lot. I mean, obviously it's been a few seasons, but yeah, I think he's a classic overpay. I think that's why Colorado is okay letting him go, especially on an actually well-constructed blue line. And I do think that would be an overpayment. I think they should look elsewhere. Who that elsewhere is, I don't know. Not a lot available for that amount of money, but
yeah, and it depends on. I mean, look, if they're picking him up as a pure rental for this year, and they're not committing long term to him and committing that salary, well, then really the only risk is whatever you trade away, right?
Yeah.
If we're talking a first round pick here, I'm feeling like you can do better at the trade deadline, and I'm thinking you can probably do better even if you hold it to the draft, because this probably isn't a team that's winning the Stanley Cup this year, but if they're a 100+ point team, they can sort of do the St. Louis model, where St. Louis had that trade deadline, I think 1 or 2 years before they won the cup, and they're like, look, we're probably not winning it this year. Let's just bulk up and make sure that we're a real contender next year. I wouldn't hate seeing something like that, but I think it's going to be really hard if the Canucks are, second in the Pacific come trade deadline day. I mean, they're at that point, yeah, you're a contender, really. I mean, even if it's only a small sample size of, let's say, 45, 50 games. I mean, if you're second in the Pacific and hanging up there with Vegas, I don't, I wouldn't be surprised if they make some moves.
Speaking of Vegas, that's the game coming next. Let's test your confidence levels. Do the Canucks make it 10 wins in November?
I think this game is honestly with the Canucks being at home and Vegas stumbling a little bit. I mean, they almost came back tonight and then they couldn't close it out. I guess it was a shootout, but either way, I think this is a textbook toss-up. I don't know what the odds have it at, but I would not be surprised if it's like 50-50 when we get to that game.
Which, considering where I think people thought this team was at the start of this season, being 50-50 and like a real threat to beat Vegas November 30th, it's a good place to be for this team.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you think about you're going to have Demko, who had an extra couple days of rest and who was, absolutely phenomenal tonight, right? 30-31. He's been so good. I mean, he's had a couple off games and then he's come back and been fantastic. And this one's no different. I do also want to jump in. Rick Tocchet says the X-rays are negative on Ilya Mikheyev. Sounds like he should be okay. So I don't know if it's still
breath of relief.
Yeah, so he maybe misses a couple games, but it sounds like it's not going to be super long term.
That's good news, I think. Best news you could expect at this point.
Yeah. What do you think happens Thursday?
I'm feeling optimistic. I don't have... Wow. I know. It's been a long time since I have felt any real sense of optimism with this team. I should probably know better. But I just, my gut instinct is they make it 10-5. I think they have a double-digit November.
Yeah, that would be very impressive. 30-day month, too. That's a very impressive to pull that off. And, yeah, Vegas they're struggling, right? I mean, they allow 4 goals to the Oilers today in that game that they lose 5-4 in the shootout. I mean, they lost to the Flames in OT. They lost to the Coyotes 2-0. They've lost 3 straight. And then before that, they beat the Stars in overtime. Yeah. And then before that, they lost to the Penguins and lost to the Flyers. So they have won 1 of their last 6, and that was an overtime win. That bodes well, right? Maybe they're going to be angry and come in and try to win extra hard. And I think that's what Anaheim tried to do a little bit tonight. But, it's hard to break streaks. And hopefully the Canucks can keep that going on Thursday.
I think for me, this is kind of one of those test points for the season. It's hard to say for a fan base that's been pretty snake bitten the last few years, has every right to be skeptical. When you see how well they've been playing, notwithstanding the last 2 weeks have been a bit rough and maybe a bit of a fallback to reality, to me, it seems like this is a team that has way more persistence and way more resilience and way more fight back than the last couple of seasons. Even tonight after a pretty brutal second period, the third period, they looked like a totally different team. And so this is essentially a 4-point game against a Vegas team that's struggling, as you say. And it's the kind of game that you have to capitalize on and win if you actually want to contend in this league. And I think it's a good test for them to see how they show up.
Yeah, you mentioned the bounce back. I mean, yeah, and tonight, 12-6 the shots in the first, 15-6 in the second. The Canucks outshot the Ducks on the bounce back 15-4 in the third. And, analytically, they went from a toss-up of a first, getting outplayed in the second, to the third period, an expected goals rate of 84%. Wow. Absolute dominance in the third. And, yeah, it is an absolute litmus test of a game, and they've had a few of them, right? They've had the game against Colorado last week, which they lose 5-2, but couple weird bounces in that one, and I think the money puck deserved to win a meter was like 54% for the Canucks.
Yeah.
So like they hung in there with Colorado. I look back to the game against the Stars in the beginning of November 4th, that they shut the Stars out 2-0 at home in that little win streak that they had. And then that Rangers game is the other big one that I think of at the end of October, where they were genuinely the better team against the Rangers on the second night of a back-to-back at home, and they just lost an OT because of that missed call in overtime. They like in all these litmus test games. Sure, they only won, you know, 2 of the 3 that I mentioned, but they looked good in all 3 of them. And they've played up to their better opponents, and if they can do that on Thursday, they'll have every chance to take at least a point.
All right. If you're new to us this season, Parker and I think Kaya have historically been probably on the scale of positive to negative. We're the more cynical fans. I like to say realistic.
I think you guys are a little farther down the spectrum than me. I think because I
spend too much time with Clay.
But I think we pulled each other a little bit.
Yeah.
I pulled him a little bit positive.
You got him to say the word tank.
I did. I was very proud of that.
It's a milestone.
Yeah. Hard not to be cynical, though. I mean, looking at the team the past few years, there was every reason to be.
But you know what? It's been way more fun this season covering this team, and it's hard not to feel hope. Kaya says she hosts on Thursday, so probably a loss. Now, Kaya, we're gonna get a win. It's gonna be 10-5. Yeah. I think I started off as the most negative of the Vancouver hosts, and I think Kaya has now gone further than I have.
Yeah, I think that might be fair.
I'm hoping. Well, to be fair, Kaya did a lot of the first few games last season when they were like 0-7.
Yeah, the 0-5-2 start. I remember that very vividly.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how much more fun it has been, right? I did my own sort of post game things 2 seasons ago, quite often, and the team, there was the whole Boudreaux thing, and that was fun, and there was at least some moments. And then last year, when you start a season 0-5-2, and you never even sniff the playoffs at all the entire season, right? Like, what is there to even look forward to, right? There was no real fun storylines. There was a bit here and there, but it was just bleak, right?
And they weren't even bad enough to be kind of in the top 5 of the draft, so.
Yeah, but now we have this team that is, in a position where they have, it's really on them to lose it, right? They are, every model has them 90+% chance to make the playoffs. They can middle out essentially the rest of the year, and they'll make the playoffs because they've built themselves up a nice buffer. Teams that are in a playoff spot by American Thanksgiving, like 80% of the time they get in. We have every reason to be positive looking at them right now, and again, not just results oriented. There has been some regression, and all the PDO is going to regress, and all this sky is falling stuff from the Toronto side that we saw on Twitter. It has a little bit, right? That PDO's regressed. They had a couple bad games, but they're still hanging in there. They're still second in the Western Conference at the end of November.
Yep.
I mean, what is there to complain about?
Absolutely nothing. And if there was something to complain about these Canucks, I'd find it.
Yes.
Kaya says she didn't cover a win until December last year. She swears. And so Kaya, I think the Canucks owe you a 10-5 November, so you can do like a positive version of the Scream.
That would be big.
So we'll see on Thursday. If you're just joining us now, the Canucks win 3-1. They're 9-5 in November. They have the leading goal scorer in the NHL in Brock Besser. And they take on the Vegas Golden Knights on Thursday. We are getting into the 30-minute mark, so we'll switch over to the presser. If you've got questions for us, throw them in the chat now. If you've got takes that you want us to talk about, throw it in there now. I know someone had a question earlier. I'm just scrolling up to find it. It was back to the trade. Alex Ramirez says they traded away Horvat, Detroit 2020 third first round pick, Beauvillier 2023 second round pick. Canucks receive Hronek, Aturati, Chicago's 2024 fifth round pick. Is this overall worth it?
I think so. And I think it's very situational, right? I think if you just go straight value, Bo Horvat and a second, essentially, for Hronek, Ratu, and a fifth. That's sort of where this trade's ended up. that's maybe not great value, but who means more to this team, or who would mean more to this team right now, right? Filip Hronek or Bo Horvat? Canucks offense looks absolutely fine without Bo Horvat. And what
And
do they
that's
do?
also not knowing what he. Even if you assume you think he gets the deal that he got from the Islanders,
that would be rich here. I wouldn't love that.
I would have hated that deal, and I was like a big Horvat fan. That's an overpayment.
Yeah, and under the circumstances, though, that we actually find ourselves in, you have JT Miller actually being competent defensively and putting up a ton of points, and like he looks like a completely different player now.
Yeah.
You have the cheap additions of Sam Lafferty, Pius Suter, Teddy Bluger, Carson Soucy, right, to round things out. And then where was the real hole then, right? It's depth on the defensive side and a top-end defenseman. They have all the top-end forwards that they need by far. And getting a guy like Filip Hronek, sure, he's more offensively oriented, but Quinn Hughes has not had a partner ever in his career, right? He had Luke Shen for 2 years. That's not good, right? That's not a situation you want to be in. So, look, Horvat was a rental. If they were either going to pay him or trade him for something, and they end up with hopefully a long-term partner for Quinn Hughes, and then they went out in free agency and filled the rest of the holes. And sure, the second-round pick sucks to lose, but the Canucks aren't in a stage. If this is their window that they're starting to step into, second-round picks don't matter. Genuinely, what, that guy's going to play for you in 2029? Maybe it doesn't matter at this point for this window. So, I'm of the mind that, all in all, that trade, if you look at it from a pure value perspective, maybe they were on a bit of a negative side, but it has absolutely benefited the team.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I would throw in that in addition to Hronek, Ratu, and the pick, you have cap space, which I think not enough people consider a concrete asset, which it absolutely is.
The Suter and Soucy are guys that they have because that cap space was there.
Yeah, and now they've got some cap flexibility to work with, which they have not had for multiple seasons now. So I'm willing to see what Allvin does with that space. I think he's earned himself the benefit of the doubt at this point. And I would say overall, I think it's a net win for the Canucks considering all of those moves together.
Yeah, what a different scenario this is, hey, where we look at the Canucks management group and like, oh, these are all fairly shrewd moves that, even any move that I've disagreed with so far, it hasn't been like egregious.
Yeah, you can understand the thinking and the rationale driving each move.
For sure, yeah. Like that Hronek trade at the time, I was like, I don't know if I love that, but I get why they did it, right?
Yeah.
And then the coaching side, Rick Tocchet. I didn't have high hopes for Rick Tocchet when he got hired, but he has absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt. And until something goes very wrong, he's got that to work with. So, just the dichotomy of comparing today's Canucks compared to a year and a half or a year ago, I should say, it's honestly mind-blowing that the Canucks are in this position.
It's incredible what some competent management can do for you.
Absolutely.
Switching gears, HSM Fangirl Gaming says, are you surprised Edler remains unsigned?
Not particularly. I mean, how old is he now? Is he like 37? Yeah, he's 37.
37. Yeah.
I think he was sort of an LA or bust guy at this point, coming into the last couple of years, right? I think it's where his wife wanted to be or something along those lines. And he was going to get paid. Last year got paid $750K, right? Is that the move that he wants to make at this point of his career? Does he want to come back for another year? How much money did he make in his career, right? He must have made $40-50 million, I imagine. So he's probably at a point where, like, financially there's no reason to. So he would only essentially do it for the love of the game. And if his body's not there anymore, and I think he'd still be competent, but I can definitely see if he's just sort of done.
Yeah, his career earnings are $59,265,344.
He's doing okay.
Yeah, he's doing okay. I will say I'm not surprised for his age, for the physical toll this game takes on you, for a guy with young kids. I think if it's a love of the game thing, his wife is from Vancouver. He's a career Canuck. I see maybe at a point later this season, if they're still on some kind of win streak, they're going to make the playoffs. Maybe he signs a really low ball deal just to finish his career out as a Canuck for the story and kind of to go out on a high note. But, there's, like you said, other than for the love of the game, there's no real reason to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I had one here. Eric is saying, how surprised are you by Hoaglander's play this season? And Eric said it was more for me because you've missed the last little while. You saw Hoaglander tonight. I was in Seattle for the game last week, and Niels Hoaglander was putting on a show there too. He had one hit at center ice that he absolutely demolished a guy who was like 5 inches taller than him. He's been fantastic. I've been a little bit worried with how the top of the lineup's been struggling a little bit, that they would sort of take him out of this role that he's starting to flourish in, the sort of third line puck retrieval physical player. I was worried, like, hey, maybe you put him on the top line with Pettersson and Kuzmenko, and who knows, maybe if Mikheyev misses a couple games, maybe that's who ends up filling that role, and I wouldn't hate it. I was a little worried that maybe taking him out of what's working might not be a great idea, but I think he's earned the opportunity, yeah, he's been good.
Yeah, I did not watch any games while I was in Asia, like none, but I did see him tonight. I thought he was good, and I'm excited to see more.
Absolutely. I'll take one more here. RP88 says, "What do you think of the Cole McWard D pair? What do you think of Cole McWard tonight? Not the two of them. The single guy, Cole McWard."
I thought he was fine.
Yeah.
Like nothing. Honestly, didn't really notice either way.
Yeah, he was a little bit Mark Friedman-y out there, where he sort of blended in. How about 3 guys on defense all in the 40s in their numbers? That's pretty bizarre.
That is pretty bizarre.
43, 47, 48. But no, I think he was good.
Yeah. I think for those kinds of players like the Friedmans and the McWards, what you want is to not be noticed.
Yeah, they've done that very well. Juleson's clearly been sort of the lower echelon of that.
Yeah.
I've been surprised that Juleson's remained in the lineup over a guy like Akito Hirose. He got in once or twice and he looked okay. But I sort of like that they got this little rotating audition squad going here, right? Hirose gets a game, Friedman sits out a little bit, Juleson gets a game, now McWard gets a game, and we can sort of pick and choose who we like and have a bit of a platoon going
and having
in the bottom half.
And I think having those kinds of players have some competition to get in the lineup is always a good thing.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? The Canucks have this big fall off, and then they have so many guys, right? They sort of had 6 guys who I think were NHL caliber, and then Susie goes down, and now you've got to fill one of those roles. And there's such a big drop off, but you have so many guys down there who are such a similar caliber that one of them just needs to take a step, right?
Yeah.
And come in and fill that role. And sort of the more lottery tickets you have there, the more likely that happens.
I agree. There was one question, I'm going to see if I can find it, about about PDG. Karan says, y'all think they should put Hogs with Miller and Besser. PDG hasn't been good enough as of late.
Yeah, the PDG train ended when you left. And again, I think he played pretty good tonight, coming into the lineup on short notice out that Pavillia trade. But yeah, he hasn't had that, that click that he had at the beginning of the season. And he doesn't have the skill to be a second line winger, but he was a good fit chemistry wise. I think if Mikheyev's out, I think they put Hoaglander up to that top unit, but I would totally be fine seeing him with Miller and Besser as well.
I guess we'll find out. Thanks for joining us tonight. The Canucks beat the Ducks 3-1. They are 9-5 in October. They go for 10 wins in 1 month on Thursday. Kyle will be here hosting. I'll be in the chat. Maybe Parker will be in the chat. Maybe Clay will be in the chat. Who knows? Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you on Thursday, everyone.